Christ is risen. Before we begin, the reason that there's a sheet out and back there with "O Lord, how shall I meet thee?" the hymn. That's a perk for going to Bible class. Through this in the sermon today, I'm going to go through all the stanzas of this, and so if you wanted to have that with you in church or just to take home on the hymn. We are looking at Genesis 31 through 33 today. Jacob fleeing from Laban, going back, confronting Esau, wrestling with God, this whole section. Okay? There was no, the source of the color images that I have for this. They don't have one for this story, and so I just found one as the resolution was terrible. But I was trying to find one that was similar in the same style, like of the Sunday school artwork, but this is going to be better. Genesis 31, Jacob flees from Laban. So in the last chapter in 30, it had talked about how the whole thing with Joseph's wages, with the flocks, right? Which initially he didn't have his wages, because remember his first wages were Rachel, and then he ended up with twice as long, 14 years total, of working for his wives, and then the flocks, and he became rich as a result of it. We're going to hear a little bit more about that here in this section. Chapter 31. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. Remember, that's what was promised to him, right? God said, I will be with you until you come back. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Just note that. So what happened when he talks about his father changing wages on him 10 times, that he would say, yeah, okay, all the spotted ones, those are yours. And then they start having more. And he says, oh, never, I changed my mind. He switched it. And then the others start having more, or producing more, as God is blessing him. And so, but to Laban's sons, it looks like Jacob's getting everything like he's doing it, but in the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, mottled, and spotted and mottled. Then the angel of the Lord said to me in a dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, mottled, and spotted and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. Just that line when God says, I've seen. Or there's other places, I've heard the cry that has come out to me. Which comes as a comfort to God's people when God says, yeah, I saw that. I heard that. I noticed that. That wasn't beyond his notice, beyond his care. I've seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel. Remember Bethel, the house of God, Jacob, the place where God had made the promise to him, the place where he said he would return, the house of God. This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. Just notice that from Rachel and Leah's perspective, they look like their father has cheated them as well. And so they said all that he's taken away our inheritance from us. That's going to come up later in Steckhart's commentary. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan, his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household goods. All right, we'll come to that in a second. Just this notion of going back home, this was not in leaving Laban's, wasn't just Jacob's idea. Jacob didn't just decide, I'm done with this. I want, he's crimping my style, or he's hurting my economic, he's cheating me. I'm going to just go and I'm going to take him away. No, he does this at God's instruction. Steckhart notes this. He says, believers do not take any important steps in their lives without God. They always examine whether their ways please God. Now, we could go too far in this, where we want to, every step that we take, we do. He says we don't want to take any important steps in our life without God. But it's what Jacob had here, we don't always get. So where Jacob has, God appears to him and says to him, do this. And that obviously, he has God's blessing and this is pleasing to God because God told him to do this, right? But we don't always have that, do we? Should I move here or there? Should I go into this field or that field? What should I do? God doesn't always appear to us, and that'd be kind of nice, helpful sometimes, if we would have a direct, like, this is what you should do. And sometimes people will conclude somehow that God has, you've heard people say that, God wants me to do this. Or even they say, I prayed and God wants me to do this, which kind of prompts the question, like, how did God tell you that? It is possible. God did this with Jacob. God could come to us in a dream. You kind of wonder sometimes if people say that they had some kind of dream or had some, vision from God, whether that's what it was or if it was just kind of indigestion. Or something else. Like ironically, God never comes to someone, God told me to do this, and it wasn't what they wanted to do. Usually it's, someone just confirming what they really wanted to do. So we don't have this. How would we know to examine our ways whether their ways please God? How would we know whether our way is pleasing to God or not? Do we have any indication? Our hymns come in handy for this. O Lord, how shall I meet you? How welcome you aright? Your people long to greet you, my hope, my heart's delight. O Jesus, let your word be a lamp to light my way, to show me how to please you, to guide me every day. What do we have as a guide to know which ways please God? We have his word. Now, his word doesn't tell us all the details of whether we should do A or B, right? What do we have? Well, we would have his commands, that have got his commandments that's going to guide us. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light for my path. So sometimes it's not going to tell us the details, but it's going to give us what we need to know. Yeah. You mean like if he blesses us, that an indication that is pleasing to God? That can be, of course. There are some things that might look like blessings that are given to wicked decisions. So like, like if I do this and it works, that doesn't necessarily mean that was the right thing. You know what I mean? If I'm doing my taxes and I say, but this is a kind of a dumb example, but if I'm doing my taxes and if I cheat on them, I'm going to get more money back. Right? But obviously that's, we know from God's word that lying and cheating would be against his will. So he doesn't approve of that, even though it might have is kind of a bad example, but it may be an indication, that if God does bless it. So he passes along the decision, tells his wives, that they're going to go. They arose, set up his sons. Laban had gone to share. Rachel stole her father's household goods and tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed to the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. So there's two things. One, you've got the first mention of the stealing of the household gods. We don't really know that much about what these were exactly. They must have been something valuable, though. So I'm guessing some kind of, they're an object, perhaps of gold, right? That they're a thing that she stole. Like, obviously they're not real gods. There is no other god, right? So there's some object that was worshipped. And then that he does so in secret. He leaves, doesn't tell Laban, and he kind of tricks him. Fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates, set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Laban overtook Jacob, but now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me and did not tell me so that I might have sent you away with mirth and song, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. All right, so he catches up with them, and then Laban gives Jacob trouble. He says, "You how does he say it? You tricked me. Make him out to be the bad guy." I don't what would have happened, because Jacob's saying, I had the fear that you wouldn't let us go. He said, "Well, oh no, I would." Was that the truth? I don't know. I think they probably had good reason to suspect that Laban would have found some other way to trick them. Laban. So Laban wants to pick on Jacob as kind of the bad guy in this. Steckhart says Laban is the picture of a stingy, deceitful, hard-hearted, and tyrannical man who seeks only his own and cares nothing for God or man. Pious, honest souls often have to suffer greatly at the hands of such people, but God watches over his own, and those whom God protects and favors, people may and cannot harm. If God protects them, they will be all right. But this is not new, or this is not limited to the Bible. This is what happens. And that they leave both stealthily Stuckart comments, "It is not wrong to flee from tyrants and choose a place where one can live safely, live happily according to his faith, and peacefully attend to one's calling." This is kind of interesting. Stuckart was born in Germany. I can't remember the exact details of his coming to the United States. There was something where he would have been trouble with the government. I can't remember the details of his whole story. I think it involves military action of some sort. But you had people, Lutherans in this country, Germans who had left their country. Many of them considering it like fleeing. They were going to a place where they could live in safety and live and confess and practice their faith without hampering. About stealing the household gods, Stuckart just says this. He says, by stealing the precious household gods of her father, a secret idol worshiper, so calling her father's the idol worshiper, Rachel only took a portion of her due wages. It is not theft if I take what belongs to me. What he's saying is that just like before when they were complaining about he's taken our inheritance from us, she's like, well, that was supposed to be mine. But I don't know. It doesn't tell us. It doesn't tell us whether she took those intending to worship him. Stuckart thinks no. She's taking it so that they can melt it down for something else. The gold, it's valuable. I don't know. Could there have been something in Rachel that Rachel still had some attachment to those for more than just her inheritance? I don't know. I don't have enough information. It's risky. It was like that, and it was kind of those tense moments make a good movie plot, or not plot, but just a scene, where they go searching for any, and it's kind of like this sort of brash thing that Jacob says, if you find anyone, you can kill them. That has this, and this is his favorite wife that has it, and and that they go and search for it, and this is like she's hiding them because she says, oh, how does she say it? Well, we didn't read that yet. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them, and he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them, and she said to her father, let not my Lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me. So he searched and did not find the household gods. So she has that excuse for not getting up. And then he doesn't bother her. There's no comment around this on whether that was shrewd of her or sinfully deceptive. It just doesn't. Do you notice the trend, though? Like Stuckart has to kind of give the patriarchs a bit of a pass and assume the best of their actions. I'm not. We can find out in heaven how that. Either way, they are the patriarchs. They are models for us of their faith in Christ, and so they don't have to be perfect along the way. So we don't have to defend them like, oh, if we don't, then we kind of like our faith is in jeopardy or something like that. Right? So, and the fact that Laban would have, he says, like, I've got the right in my power to do you harm. And it sounds like he would have if God had not previously come to Laban and said, even says, don't say a word to him, either good or bad. Don't even, that God is protecting him. God keeps his hand over his chosen ones. Without his will, no man may harm a hair on their heads. The power of the wicked extends only as far as God gives them room. And then, let's see. Verse 36, Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed." Just that phrase in verse 42. If God had not been on my side, it sounds like Psalm 124. If God had not been on our side and had not come to aid us, that's Luther's paraphrase of the psalm. If God hadn't been on my side, you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. So he's defending himself. Of course, that's interesting, though, that one of the parts of the defense is, what have you taken, or what's missing from, what have I taken? And it turns out there is something that was not him. He didn't take it, but he defends himself as before Laban as, I have not done you wrong. I've been a good worker. I haven't stolen from you. I have, I've even, where even you insisted that I pay for everything, but if something got lost, I just bore that loss. Check out, it's kind of a long section here. His service is an example of true vocational faithfulness. The difference between believers and unbelievers is also evident in how the one and the other carry out the daily work of their duty. Unbelievers are self-seeking, unjust. Wherever possible, they swindle and diminish the rights of their neighbors. The believers are diligent, faithful, conscientious, shy away from no effort or trouble day and night, see to it that they overlook, omit, or neglect nothing, and serve God and their neighbor with the works of their hands. Whoever has a good conscience in this regard may also boast before people and reject all unjust accusations. So before, this is kind of important. Before people, before man, we can defend ourselves. Before God, we're not going to do that. When we stand before God, we say, before God, I confess everything. Have mercy on me for everything. Before God, I'm not going to stand there and defend man and say, well, I did this for you, and I did. Before God, I'm going to let Jesus take all of that. He's going to be, as we hear in the Old Testament reading, the Lord our righteousness. My righteousness, my entire righteousness, when I stand before God, is going to be Jesus. Before man, if my conscience is clear in this, I can stand before it and defend myself, assuming that and that my faith is played out in my day-to-day life. Hard work is a fruit of faith. Diligence, attention. Yeah, and Jacob shows that. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. What can I do this day for these my daughters or for their children whom they have borne?" It's just an interesting, interesting thing that he says. These daughters are my daughters. He gave them in marriage to Jacob, right? Yes, they're not Jacob's daughters. They're his daughters still. But then, and he also says, the children are my children. Well, they're his grandchildren. I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. Other than it's worth wrestling that both of those things are true. When you deal in family, and the the relations with the in-laws and the extended family, that there is something still binding us together. So there's something that is true that Laban says, these are part of his extended family, but they're not his children. And he does have to let them go here. Of course, yeah. If they're to be his children, then they should be, and his daughters should be. If we want to claim a family loyalty, then we have to treat people with a family loyalty. Does that make sense? Like if you act towards extended family like it's like they're a bad business partner or something like that, then you can't expect that you'd get the same kind of familial giving, Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. They took stones and made a heap. They ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar, so I don't know. But Jacob called it Galeed. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore, he named it Galeed. But basically, they make an agreement that they're, they set up this stone and says, I'm not going to go past this to hurt you. You're not going to come past this. Interesting, in verse 50, the Lord watched between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. So that's an interesting thing. It says, as long as if you're living in the vicinity, I can keep an eye on that you're not mistreating my daughters that are given to you in marriage. And if they did, I think he has some, if Jacob were to mistreat these wives, his daughters, he would step in and say something. Where he says, but if you're out of my sight, and so they make this covenant. It says, if you do that, the Lord sees. That there is some interest in protecting these daughters and the family. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and the pillar, which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness that I will not pass over this heap to you. You will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me, and to do harm. God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned home. That's chapter 31. We've got to keep going. Chapter 32. First, so Jacob is on his way. He's going to meet Esau again. When on his way, the angels of God met him. We've seen that before, the angels of God. Then Jacob saw them. When Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. And he called that place Mahanaim. Jacob, which footnote says two camps. And so what he's going to do is he's going to split up the two. Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, female servants. I have sent to tell my lord in order that I might find favor in your sight. Sends a message ahead, telling things have gone well, but I'm seeking your favor. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we have come to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. They don't say anything about how he's coming, just as he's coming out, and he's got 400 men. Could have given a little bit more detail, or some indication of how's this going to go. Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the flock, the people who were with him, and the flocks and the herds and camels into two camps, thinking if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. So he divides so that he can't attack both places at once. Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of the steadfast love and the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. That's really a tremendous prayer. In the time of danger, that he starts off with, this kind of is repentance, or at least he's like, I do not deserve all the good that you've done to me. Of a recognition that I have received all of this. So if it were to go away, if all this were to be taken away from me, I didn't deserve it in the first place. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered or multiplied. And then he goes to a promise that God made to him. So I deserve nothing. You've given to me much. You've promised me that you'd bring me back. You've promised me this offspring. So he stayed there that night, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau. 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels, and this is a lot of animals. Handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, said to his servants, pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove and drove. So he's going to send a present ahead of him. But before this, he's afraid. Steckhart has this comment. So he's got all these promises, but as Jacob was filled with great fear and anxiety, even believers are still clinging to the flesh, which easily makes them stupid, anxious, and despondent. It seems like that strong, but that's true, right? He is a believer. He believes in God's promise, but his fear is indication that the sinful flesh makes us stupid. I looked up to make sure that Google translated that word right, but that's about it. The kind of blockhead. It makes us not remember that God has carried us so far. If God has taken care of, to say God will care for you if He's promised it, and He has in the past. We don't need such fear. But then he takes action, right? He splits the camp. He sends the the gift of all these animals ahead. He instructed the first, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third and all those before. So you got one drove of animals and then another, and so each one is to be another set of gifts. All the drove, you shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And you shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us, for he thought I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me. And afterward I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed that night in the camp. About this, Tucker said, we should trust in God in all our needs, but not tempt God, but rather summon all our strength and use our common sense to avert distress and danger. So the fact that we would trust God in a dangerous situation doesn't mean don't do anything. Use your head, and so using that to say, well, the splitting of the two camps, trying to right and wise when we anticipate our adversaries, offer them reconciliation, seek in every way through gifts, favors, and kindness to soften their hard hearts. It's not stupid to be nice, to try to, when someone is opposed to us, that we would try to soften their hardness with our kindness. Then, the same night, he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had, and Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is in the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. And we get to hear this every year, the second Sunday, I believe, in Advent. Jacob wrestling with God. The one who he's wrestling with is identified. Not here, I don't think. Here it doesn't. It says he's just wrestling with a man. I think it's in Hosea, if this is the section that I'm thinking of. Hosea 12. He wrestled with the angel and prevailed, for he wept and besought him. Identifies this as the angel of the Lord. Right? But we already see this when he says he won't tell him his name, and then he says, "You have striven with God. You've wrestled with God and have prevailed." Yeah. And the fact that he gets the name Israel, he wrestles with God. Yeah. So this man, which again, going back to the promise at Bethel, says, I will not leave you until I have brought you back and blessed you. Now he brings him back. He's not at Bethel exactly here, but at Peniel. But here he's holding him to his promise, wrestling with God. Believers, this is the section, and it's too long for me to put up on a slide, so I'm going to read this to you, about this wrestling with God. And it's the same, so that gospel on second Sunday in Lent, when we hear this reading, is Jesus and the Canaanite woman who's asking for help, and Jesus ignores her, and he says, "It's not right to take the children's bread and feed it to the dogs." And it seems like he's opposed to her, right? He seems like Jesus is kind of wrestling with her. He calls her a dog, and he just ignores her. It says believers experience something similar in the hour of temptation, the hour of severe spiritual temptation. Then God presents himself as their enemy. In their hearts and consciences, they feel only fear, terror, and condemnation. What they have previously heard and experienced about God's grace, goodness, and faithfulness appears to them as a vain delusion and imagination. It is a matter of praying, sighing, wrestling, and fighting. One must not give up, not let God go, but must hold fast to God, to God's grace, the word of grace, and say with Jacob, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And God himself helps us pray and fight and allows himself to be overcome. Finally, in spirit and faith, we see the grace of God and receive blessing, comfort, and refreshment from God, and recognize that God is not truly angry with us, but only wanted to test and prove our faith. The precious fruit of such temptation is that we become all the more certain of the grace of our God and gain a steadfast heart. So in his testing of us, strengthening us through that. Then they meet, reconciling together Jacob and Esau. Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants. He put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Just note that, the way he speaks of his children. These are the children whom God has graciously given your servant. Just important for us to speak always clearly about children as the ones God gives, given to us by the Lord, by grace too. Then the servants drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last Joseph and Rachel drew near and they bowed down. Esau, what do you mean by all this company that I met? Jacob answered, to find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, no, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. Thus he urged him, and he took it. So, happy ending on that comes. And Esau kind of initiated, I guess Jacob does that initially by sending the gifts ahead, but Esau just runs into his arms. Brothers don't shake hands, brothers got a hug. And they, sometimes brothers have to be away from each other for a little while before they get to that point and appreciate one another. But how did this happen? This isn't because of the gifts. Not even just because time has passed. Time doesn't heal all wounds. God has power over the hearts of men, has the power to soften hard hearts so that they can open themselves to God and man. But this is interesting. But God wants to accomplish his work in the hearts of men, through the testimony, the requests, and the admonitions of his believers. So God does the work of changing hearts, right? But he does use us, and he wishes to use that in the hearts of men when God would soften the hearts of unbelievers. He does that work. God is the one who converts unbelievers to believers, right? But how does he do that? He doesn't do that without means. He doesn't promise to do that without means. How does he do that? Well, we would say through the means of grace, through the Word of God, right? But who speaks the Word of God? Well, that might be you, right? Right? So if God wishes, God is the one who changes the hearts, wants to accomplish his work in the hearts of men through men, test their testimony, the admonitions of his believers. God is the one who does the work. We sow the seed, speak, encourage, admonish. Yeah. Then, what is it we got? Esau said, let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you. But Jacob said to him, my Lord knows that the children are frail, that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Seems like an overstatement, but they probably don't all die. But he says, we don't want to push them too hard. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir. So Esau said, let me leave you with some of the people who are with me. He said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So first he says, you come with me. He says, no, we'll go out at our own pace. This is how I leave some people to help you. He says, no, we got it. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir, but Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on the way to Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. And he, from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe El Israel, which you can see at the bottom. God, the God of Israel, or the God of Jacob. The question of why doesn't he go with him? There's a comment on this here. 2 reasons why Jacob rejected Esau's offer and wanted to continue on his own. He knew that the God's armies were traveling with him. He did not need the protection of armed soldiers. Those who fear the Lord walk safely under the escort of angels. Above all, Jacob did not want to get too close to Esau and his men. He was and remained the heir and the bearer of the promise. His seed, the holy seed, was not to mingle with Esau's lineage. Esau was indeed converted to God from his heart, but not all members of his lineage shared his disposition. And then he goes on, thus, believing Christians should maintain peace with all people, but still remain separate from those with whom they are not entirely at one in spiritual matters. So they maintain peace with all people, get along with them, interact with them, but remain some separation. And we're going to see that kind of a theme in the Old Testament especially. God saying, you're not like the others. And that there would be some separation, kind of a portion of what we do, and the reason for maintaining a church fellowship that says if we're not at one in spiritual matters, we're not entirely the same thing, and God has warned us that there's a danger in being too familiar. Of course, it's going to be a really big thing later on, children of Israel in the land of Canaan later on, in warning them against intermarrying, and then they're going to do what God said don't do, and then that's going to be a problem. But here you see a positive example of maintaining some separation. I didn't think we were going to get through that. You're rushed. But maybe you have questions. I have questions. You answer my questions. What are your questions? Well, that's right. I just remembered now that I was supposed to get done a little bit early so the choir can rehearse. So we can just say, man, unless you have something quick in 1 minute,